Doctors and nurses of Reddit, have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? What happened? Had two women deliver on the same unit, same baby daddy. He would go back and forth between rooms. That's wild. A hospital where I was a med student had a baby born with high drops, which is where a baby gets two bad copies of a red blood cell gene, one from each parent. Baby died shortly after birth. Parents came in for genetic counseling and testing revealed the woman's husband did not carry the alpha thalassemia gene. The couple asked what was the chance another baby of theirs would have this condition. The doctors were honest and told them 0%. They left it at that. Not a doctor, but my wife grew up in a really small town, but wasn't born there. When she got her first crush on a boy and told her best friend, the friend was like, "Did you talk to your mom yet?" Apparently, adultery was so widespread in this area, it was common practice for girls to talk to their mom about crushes and who the crush's parents were so they didn't end up dating their half-sibling. There's a song about that. Guy wants to court a girl but his dad keeps telling him no. That girl is ya sister, but you mama don't know. He talked to his mama and she says, "Go man, go. Yo daddy ain't ya daddy, but ya daddy don't know." Had a mum-to-be who had narrowed the options for babadaddy down to her top 3. She was having a C-section and didn't understand why all 3 potential dads couldn't come into theater. She then asked if we could rotate them through, and maybe she'd let the one that was there when baby came out be the real daddy. It took all my professionalism to smile politely. I've just imagined a 9-year-old one-up a kid from gay couple by saying, "Ye well I have 3 dads, beat that." A nurse friend of mine told me about helping with a vasectomy when the doctor saw that the patient, a married father of 2 children, was clearly infertile and would have been all his life. Due to the man taking Valium before the local anesthetic, the doctor made the guy come back for a follow-up where he had to explain the man's medical condition to him. No idea what the fallout was. My brother's best friend didn't resemble his father while growing up, so he became more and more suspicious. The father eventually did a DNA test when my brother's friend was 11 or 12 and found out it's not his. The parents split up with the older daughter, 16, going with the father because she resembled him, so he was sure about her. Poor situation for everyone. The kid lost his father in that situation. He knew nothing different and it wasn't his fault. Talk about an attachment disorder starting point. Not quite on topic, but African American babies usually are much lighter skin right after birth and then tend to get a little darker. The nurses usually warn the fathers about this, but I guess no one had told this guy. We were in a C-section and the baby came out significantly lighter than the father and we all saw his face drop. Thankfully the nurses saw it and told him that the baby looked exactly like him. Laughed about it later. I worked in a restaurant right after high school, and there was a couple who worked there too. When the girlfriend got pregnant, she dipped out on him and moved back to her family in Alaska. After a month or so, the boyfriend got enough cash together to follow her. He dropped out of college and got a job on her dad's fishing boat to support his new family. Months later the baby is born and it becomes more obvious why the girl took off, because they're both white and that baby was black. That dude was a class act. It's too bad his girl couldn't work up the courage to tell him the truth instead of just bailing out. Now she looks even worse. I'm a midwife. I once had a woman come to my clinic unannounced. She wasn't my patient, but I'm NHS so saw her anyway. She had a man with her. She knew she was about 3 months pregnant but hadn't come for any antenatal care. I asked if she'd had made love the night before. She'd come in because she'd had a little bleeding. I looked at the partner as mum said yes and he said nothing to do with me. I'm just the baby daddy. Turns out she had a new boyfriend at home. This was just the guy she'd been with 3 months before. I popped her up on the table to examine her and straight away had to tell her that she was actually about 5 months along, but I would arrange a scan to confirm. The dude just got up and walked out. Turns out there was a third guy 5 months ago. I had a patient like this. She was like 28 weeks or something. Pretended her last period was 2 months prior to my visit with her and that this boyfriend of 3 months was the only potential father. When I explained that he was not, she asked when was the latest she could get an abortion. Answer: quite a while ago in our area. My mum's friend has 3 sons to her ex-husband. Two of them look like him. The second one looks a lot like the man she left her husband for. But of course they didn't get together until after she divorced her husband. Doesn't help how her new partner very clearly has a favorite kid. First husband's child support bill most certainly includes the third child though. I had a doctor that thought my boy wasn't mine because he came out blonde with blue eyes. I'm half native with dark hair, dark green eyes, and my dad is a blonde blue green eyed dude. My wife is a very dark brunette and her dad is a blonde blue green eyed dude. It got grandfathered in. He is tested genetically as mine. But the doctor was very iffy. Doctor here. I had a newborn patient who needed blood donation for surgery and was a rare type AB. Family stepped in to get tested and see if anyone could donate blood for his procedure. Supposed dad tests O, which would make it impossible for him to have an AB child, since the child gets the A from one parent and the B from the other. Someone else in the family donated and everything worked out in the end. But I wonder if this dad ever found out he wasn't the biological father. When I was a student nurse there was this one couple. Mother was Asian and husband was white. The husband had a brother, African American. He is adopted from what I remember. The mother had been in labor for around 12 hours and they were very excited to see their baby. I remember the father had been pacing my entire shift back and forth in the waiting room. When it came time to mount the mother on the table he asked the doctor if he could be in the room. He was grinning like a madman. It was a very positive energy. You could almost get completely absorbed by it. The doctor was a nice guy. He let us get him some throwaway scrubs and let him stay in the room. All in all the actual birthing process was pretty standard. However, when the baby came out then came the rough part. He was a normal healthy half African American boy, around 3 kilograms. I just looked at the baby then looked at the father and watched his face go from joy to puzzlement to horror in around 10 seconds. The mother called out for her child and the doctor being all business cut and suctioned the baby. I'm pretty sure at that moment the father broke because he sort of just stepped back and kept saying what the frick under his breath. I didn't get to see much of them for the next 2 hours but I was there when the mother was brought to her room. Her husband and his brother were there as well and she was talking to them. From what I saw she was trying to console her husband and his brother was trying to hug him. The husband kind of just kept shrugging off his brother's arms and crying into his hands. It was a really tough thing to see, but all in all it wasn't really as dramatic as you'd expect. Frick, that breaks my heart. Not a doctor but I worked in adoptions. A couple showed up wanting to discuss adoption. She was so obviously pregnant. The catcher, she and he both insisted that they had never fricked, only heavy petting and they assumed some semen had traveled through clothing. I don't know what happened because they never came back. Technically she can get pregnant without penetration, but it's very difficult. I'm a doctor, and the story actually involved my colleague. So I'm friends with this guy who we'll call Nut in med school. We're not close friends, but we have some common friends. And we shared some rotations together. And this girl we'll name Mary. Mary was already married at the time and had a 3-year-old daughter. Nut and Mary were close. But Mary got held back because Mary got pregnant and therefore had to temporarily stop studying. During that time, me and Nut became interns, and Nut began hanging out often with another girl named Belle. Nut and Belle weren't that close or physical with each other, so it came as a surprise when 2 months before internship ended, we found out that Belle was pregnant. Turns out that the two were frick buddies the entire time. Anyway, they graduated, and eventually Belle gave birth to a baby boy, who looked like Nut's miniature clone. It was as if the baby got nothing out of the mother, at all. Some of us even joked that Nut's seed was just that strong that he doesn't create offspring, he creates clones. Now, Mary eventually caught up with her studies, and entered junior internship so she got to rotate with some of us. And when she showed us the picture of her baby boy, he also looked exactly like Nut. Note that we knew what Mary's husband looked like, and what Mary's daughter looked like. Her son looked just like Nut, so much that if you placed her son beside Belle's, you could easily mistake them as twins. We did just that. Not sure what happened to them now. I moved to a nearby hospital, but I never really talked to any of the three. But last I heard from Nuts and my mutual friend, Nuts' partner, he claimed he won't marry her, and son were left in a city around 4 hours away. Belle worked there. Mary's husband, daughter, and son were in the US. Mary's husband was studying aeronautics or SMTH similar, and Nut and Mary were on duty the same day at the same hospital. If you ever find out what happened to them, please update so we can bust this nut. Our NICU does not allow paternity testing to be done inpatient, and some of our babies stay with us for 3-6 months depending on their gestation. We've had a few long and awkward waits for babies to get discharged before we could find out who the dads are. The two most recent cases were babies born at 23 and 25 week gestations, both kids with 3 possible dads. None of the potential dads stayed involved in the 3+ month hospital stay waiting to find out if they're the father. It's so awkward for the staff. I was a nurse for a urologic surgeon, so lots of vasectomies. Guy came in off that he had gotten his wife pregnant after his vas. He had never originally followed up to make sure his swimmers were dead. Doc had him leave a sample to look under the microscope, went back to the exam room and told him his vas had been successful. Guy just walked out. I read an article several years ago about a doctor who was involved in the studies about the Rh blood factor in the late 1930s or early 1940s. The study took place in a New York maternity hospital and was done with married couples. Blood samples were taken from newborn babies, the mother and father, and tested. In about 10% of the cases, the results of the blood test for a couple didn't match what the Rh factor should have been. The doctor went to the mothers alone and asked if the husband was actually the father. Most of the women admitted the husband was not, or he might not be. This was back in the 1930s, 1940s with married women. My husband is a surgical technician. Years ago he helped deliver a baby via emergency C-section. The baby was black and born to 2 very white parents. The dad freaked out and left the hospital with the mom in tears. The doctor convinced him to get a paternity test and he did end up being the father. Genetics is weird. I love genetics. We're a white family, but every now and then a much darker baby is born. We have a distant ancestor from Africa and still carry that gene. It's mainly the men that show it, but some of us girls definitely have non-Caucasian elements too. I work in a NICU and frequently babies will come down to our units accompanied by their father while mom is still getting stitched up, and it is usually the time when fathers will question us about how to do a paternity test, or they will ask us questions like, does this baby look half black to you, or would you say this baby could be mine or not? We've also had an occasion where mom has admitted to us dad isn't baby's father, but we're not legally able to say anything, so we just have to pretend we know nothing and we'll just submit a social work consult to look into the situation a bit more. Obligatory, not a Dr. Fremulin, SHHH, but I know a couple that were very excited to have twins. Baby birthday comes. Mom and dad are in the delivery room. Baby 1 comes out and it's immediately clear they aren't his. He's white. She's white. The babies are not. The community was shook. They're divorced now. 99. I'm a father who had this happen to him, but it was fine. My wife and I adopted a set of embryos and my wife birthed them. The genetic parents are Chinese and Korean descendants. My wife and I are European descent. We let the doctors know, and they all agreed to not tell one of the doctors in training, resident or something like that. When he would come in to wiggle the twins' legs and do all the stuff, he would look at my kid's eyes, then nervously glance at me, then do his exam and quietly walk out. I asked him a few questions about why they had such dark hair when my wife and I are lighter haired. He responded about grandparents and recessive genes. Pretty good future, doc. On our second to last day in the hospital, the staff told him and he was very relieved. He was scheduling a chaplain visit for us. Oh, you cruel bastards. I love it. My dad told me this story. He was in Co in the army, and one night he received a call that the wife of one of his soldiers was in the hospital having a baby. His first response was, "So why are you calling me?" It turns out that the wife was 99.9% sure the baby wasn't his and she needed someone to make sure he didn't go crazy at the hospital. So my dad drives down there, and he finds his soldier trying to push past the doctors into the delivery room. He's screaming that he has a right to be in there, etc. My dad puts his hand on his shoulder, a preface to physically restraining him, and tells him that he can't go in. The guy must have realized that he really wasn't getting him there, because he just sank to his knees, started crying, and kept saying, "I just wanted to see my son being born." It was apparent that he wasn't going to hurt anyone, so they got him to the waiting room and my dad left thinking I just watched the end of someone's marriage. Come Monday morning, the guy comes in with the biggest smile, walking around showing everyone pictures of his black baby. He was white. Of course, they questioned and ribbed him about it, but he would just proudly say, "That's my son." Best case scenario to a messed up situation. I'm not sure how the family is doing now, but it seems like the kid would grow up with a father, or two, who loved him. Okay, I have 2 stories that aren't exactly what the OP asked but still applicable. 1. A woman came to the OR with abdominal pain. She was there with her girlfriend. We ran a pregnancy test per protocol. Don't ever trust a patient when it comes to physical relationship history. So I got to break the news to this lesbian couple that one of them was unexpectedly pregnant. And, yes, I tried to discreetly tell the patient the news alone, but she insisted anything I had to say should be done so in front of her girlfriend. Okay, but I don't think that was the prize she was expecting. Baby daddy showed up. Commotion ensued. Security had to get involved when girlfriend started attacking baby daddy. 2. A teenage mom brought her newborn to the OR to be evaluated for something fairly minor. New parent didn't really know what she was doing. There was also this teenage guy in the room, so I asked his relationship to the patient. He said he was the stepdad. Apparently he had been dating the mom for about a month. Baby is about 3 weeks old. It took me a few minutes to wrap my head around that one. For his own sake, I really hope that dumb guy didn't sign the birth certificate. This happened to me actually. No one said anything to me about their suspicions. 2 years later it comes out that my daughter wasn't biologically mine. By that time I only saw her as my daughter and nothing else. After months of depression and confusion I worked it out where I left the mom and I adopted the little girl. She's raised as my daughter and I don't see her any other way. A bigger man than most. Bravo sir. My cousin is white, brown hair, green eyes. Her hubby looks black, dark skin, hair, eyes. Soon before the delivery of their son, the nurse says, "Ooh, I love caramel colored skin." She was very quiet when a pale white baby, blonde hair and blue eyes popped out. My cousin's hubby's father was also born blonde hair, blue eyes. He takes after his father's father, lol. Yeah, genetics are weird and stuff, but it's kinda weird to say that you love caramel colored skin. A friend of mine had been hearing rumors that his wife was cheating on him. He refused to believe them until he found out one day that there was trait that is passed from parents to children. I wanna say cleft chin, but it's not important. Anyways, he went and got a DNA test done as he and his wife did not have the trait, and it turns out it wasn't his kid. They tested their other 2 kids and he was only the father of the middle child. The first and third child were from 2 different guys. He flipped out and punted her out the house, and she in turn drained his business account and ghosted away while he started divorce proceedings. He lost almost everything but saved his business by changing the name and some other stuff so that it can't be used in the divorce settlement. He managed to keep the dogs, which he tried to get custody of. The house was totally in his name, so he was able to keep that too. He was really bad for a while, stopped eating and crap, but he is looking much better now and he has got a new girlfriend and seems happy again. The 2 older kids still pop to see him as they are over 18, but he hasn't seen the youngest as she is still a child. My cousin has dark skin, like our entire family is pastel white, but he looks Hispanic. It was a joke for a long time in my family, including between he and his dad, about his dad not being his real father. Like they'd call each other alleged father and alleged son. Anyway, my aunt and uncle got into the whole ancestry.com thing like 10 years ago, and turns out my aunts, who married into our family, great-grandfather was black. She was pastel white like us, but apparently her mom had darker skin too, but just looked Southern Italian, which she also was. Maybe not related, but sort of a funny story. This is exactly my family. We are all pastel white, but my brother was born with dark hair and very tan. He is definitely my father's son. We have a couple cousins that are the same way, aunts and uncles too. Was a postpartum nurse for several years. I had several dads say the baby wasn't theirs because the baby wasn't black enough and she must have been with a white boy behind his back. It takes a few days for the baby's pigment to darken. What I was taught by a senior nurse was that when you look at the baby's testicles, if it's a boy, it will tell you how dark the pigment of their skin will be. But you could tell these men were just looking for any excuse to ditch out on the baby. Very sad. Just checked and can confirm that my skin tone of my testicles match the rest of my body. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.